You can scale on BSV in ways you can't scale anywhere else. And that is what is controversial for people. Why is that? Let's examine that for 1 second, yeah? It's because of this reason. Because BSV is built on the premise, and it's being worked on under the premise that Satoshi was right and everyone else in crypto was wrong, okay? Of course that's gonna trigger everybody. Implicitly, that's really what the message is. Everyone else in crypto, including BTC, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, everyone else, it says, we know better than Satoshi and Bitcoin's original design. So of course there's gonna be tension. Of course there's gonna be hate for this network.
Can big blocks scale? And if they can, would it centralize the network? First, let's take a look if it's even possible. Bitcoin currently only allows for a few transactions per second. It has 1 megabyte blocks about every 10 minutes. This equals to 144 blocks per day and 50 gigabytes per year of storage. This size has caused massive congestion in the network, raising confirmation times to hours or days, and the average transaction fee is $57 as of today at the end of 2017. An 8 terabyte hard drive currently costs only about $150, which could contain the next 160 years worth of the current blockchain. In order for Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash to raise to the level of Visa, it would require a little less than 2,000 transactions per second. Without SegWit, this would require 300 megabyte blocks, equaling to less than 16 terabytes per year, or 2 of our $150 hard drives. All our transactions would be less than a penny, and without replaced by fee, this allows for instant zero confirmation on small to medium purchases at worldwide adoption level. It's really that simple. The argument is that the cost of storage and bandwidth would cause some users not to be able to afford to run nodes and consolidate them to miners only. Let's explore this. Big blocks change the requirements of 2 resources, storage and bandwidth. Storage is easy. 16 terabytes per year of storage would only be needed at the height of adoption. This would take time. Even today, $300 a year would be affordable enough for most to run. After all, that's only 5 transaction fees worth of Bitcoin. But storage gets cheaper over time due to Moore's law. Let's look at prices per gigabyte over the past 50 years. In 1967, it was $1 million per gigabyte. 1980, $200,000. 1990, $7,000. 1997, 20 years ago, $450. 2000, $15. 2005, 64 cents. 2010, 10 cents. 2015, 5 cents. 2017, 2 cents per gigabyte. Technological innovation does not stop. By the time 300 megabyte blocks are required, this will be a non-issue more than it already is. So what about bandwidth? Bandwidth is an issue in many developing countries, but internet connectivity is also affected heavily by innovation and is spreading at a rapid rate around the world. Today, if Adbuki Adbani from Nigeria is already having problems with bandwidth, it's likely that his slow connection to his node is hurting the network and slowing relayed transactions from reaching full nodes to be propagated into blocks. Which brings us to the question, why does he need to run a node anyways? You often hear that nodes validate transactions, keep the network secure, keep miners from changing the protocol to their benefits, or are the integrated voting mechanism of Bitcoin. But this is only true for full nodes, that is, a node that has hash power behind it. Let's imagine a busy airport next to a hotel. The hotel is where the transactions begin, and the airport is the next blocks, where the transactions need to end up. Transactions need to be taken by the nodes and placed in a block. Transactions are the people, and the vehicles are nodes. The gas to run the vehicles is the hash power. Joe comes out of the hotel and needs to be taken to the airport. So he steps into the first taxi he sees, only to find the taxi can't move. It has no gas. So Joe steps out to try the next vehicle, and repeats this until he finds a vehicle that is able to take him to the airport. This is how your node relays transactions. It's not relaying them towards the destination, but randomly passing it to another node in hopes that it has hash power behind it. The only node capable being a full mining node, but the relay was never needed. Joe could have stepped straight out of the airport and into the proper vehicle without the trouble of hopping from one to another. If your vehicle spots something on the road, it can do nothing about it. You can't drive to alert anyone or change anything. You are stuck dead in your tracks with an empty tank. Saying everyone in the world should have a car is meaningless if you do not have the gas to power it. Your node isn't performing its function. This is where the confusion is, because in the Bitcoin white paper, nodes all have hash power behind them. It wasn't until later that the mining function became optional, and your node could be read-only, to be used as a wallet. This was before SPV wallets were available. People think that their nodes are helping to secure the network, but they're not. Like the taxi, they are just sitting there waiting. Without the hash power, your node acts like it was never there. Any validation, rejection, or confirmations it might make have no impact on what the miners or the pools do. It only receives the block information after the true full nodes have done their job. If your node rejects a block receiving from the mining node, it is just forking itself off the network. It doesn't fix anything. Bitcoin is a proof-of-work system. If you do no work, there is no proof, and you get no power. If non-mining nodes had the power that people believed, someone would easily whip up 10,000 nodes on cloud servers to perform a cyber attack. This doesn't happen because without the hash power, the nodes have no influence. This is not a design flaw. This is a great strength. Non-mining nodes do serve a purpose, but it's the purpose not for the network, but for the operator of the node. It allows you to have a copy of the ledger that is already validated by real full nodes. It allows you to independently verify zero confirmation instant transactions. If there was a situation where the miners colluded into a 51% attack or double spend, it would allow you to see it, but you still couldn't do anything about it. This makes it useful for businesses accepting Bitcoin to run these nodes, not users. As Satoshi said, users should use SPV wallets. Have you ever heard anyone talk about the lack of security and reliability of SPV cold wallets like Trezors or Ledgers? No, they are above secure. The issue is not that nodes could potentially be consolidated. The issue is the lie that regular users should have to run nodes. Let's look at some of the quotes from Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin himself. The current system, where every user is a network node, is not the intended configuration for a large scale. That would be like every Usernet user runs their own NNTP server. The design supports letting users just be users. The more burden it is to run a node, the fewer nodes there will be. Those few nodes will be big server farms. The rest will be client nodes that only do transactions and don't generate. At first, most users would run network nodes, but as the network grows beyond a certain point, it would be left more and more specialists with server farms of specialized hardware. A server farm would only need to have one node on the network, and the rest of the local area network connects to that one node. Only people trying to create new coins would need to run network nodes. People have been fed a lie that running these worthless nodes somehow does something good for the network. But why? One reason is that it gives the illusion of decentralization while contributing to the process of centralization via second layers. People are fighting tooth and nail to contribute to this system because they believe it's the right thing to do. Secondly, with the introduction of SegWit, relay nodes are needed to relay the segregated signatures from the transactions. Core has created the need for a party that has no financial incentive to do so. By fooling you, you keep their broken system running. Bitcoin is supposed to be a system regulated by incentives, but now relies on trickery and lies. Worthless wallet nodes were never supposed to and not required to be a distributed part of the system. And I understand the sentiment, just as I wish I could be a miner. We all want to be part of the system, but don't let sentiment blind you to be a burden. On-chain scaling is the long-term, simple, affordable solution and could be implemented today. It was planned from the very beginning, but the protocol was purposely blocked and destroyed in order to place financial institutions as required middlemen for the new system to run. Feel free to disagree with me, but first read the white paper. It's obvious that this was foreseen and never a problem in the first place. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Tell me how your node is going to keep anything in check. How is it going to enforce anything? How can it stop the evil miners from doing anything? You've been lied to, so you can relay segregated signatures for free to allow the banks to be middlemen. Welcome to the harsh, cold reality of greed and power. Let's talk about Blockstream. Blockstream hasn't been around for as long as many think, only being founded in 2014 by Adam Back and made public in 2015. Now employing most of the active Bitcoin Core developers, this new corporation has nearly complete control over Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin's single development team. Notice that I said corporation. Blockstream isn't a foundation. It isn't community-funded, donation-based, or even self-funded for that matter. It's a for-profit company with products, employees, and investors. But how does a for-profit company profit from developing a peer-to-peer decentralized cryptocurrency that is designed to have no intermediary roles to pull profit from? Well, you create them. Adam Back, Blockstream CEO, states, Blockstream plans to sell sidechains to enterprises, charging a fixed monthly fee, taking the transaction fees, and even selling the hardware. End quote. Sidechains are a separate blockchain that is pegged to Bitcoin's value. You send one Bitcoin to a smart contract and receive a new coin on the sidechain. Coins on the sidechain can differ from Bitcoin in just about any way. They can have better smart contract capabilities, offer instant transactions, or anonymity features. But the key difference between sidechains and the Bitcoin blockchain is that transaction fees don't go to the miners, they go to the developers of the sidechains. This should set off some major red flags. These profitable sidechains fill in the gaps of what Bitcoin is not capable of. The more Bitcoin is capable of, the less sidechains will be used. And the more limited Bitcoin is, more profit can be pulled by more users needing to use the sidechains. Blockstream doesn't make profit on what Bitcoin can do. Blockstream makes money on what Bitcoin cannot do, while in control over Bitcoin's development. This is a clear conflict of interest. You can take this to two extremes. One, if Bitcoin scales perfectly on-chain, has reliable instant transactions, and general smart contract capabilities, there will not be a need for side chains or second layers. The company will have no source of income and will eventually fail. Or the other extreme. If Bitcoin can't scale on-chain, has unreliable transaction times, high fees, no smart contract capabilities, there will be endless ways to profit from Bitcoin's shortcomings. And we all know what has happened since 2015. Bitcoin's block size has not been raised. Transaction fees fluctuate wildly. Confirmation times are completely unreliable. Zero confirmation instant transactions were removed. The opcodes allowing smart contracts were also removed. All on-chain progress has been halted, other than compatibility upgrades for the integration of second layers. All while Blockstream has been working on their second layers like Liquid and Lightning. Second layers on the Bitcoin chain are really more accurately described as fee harvesting layers, attempting to restore the original functionality of Bitcoin while redirecting fees and decision-making from the miners to the developers. Blockstream's need for these fee harvesting layers was further increased when they began raising investment money, taking a total investment of over $80 million from large institutions such as AXA Strategic Ventures and the Digital Currency Group, which have considerable ties to MasterCard, the Federal Reserve, the Bilderberg Group, and various other central banking entities. raising further questions to the motives and ethical nature of those in charge at Blockstream. It's clear that their values are no longer in line with the original Bitcoin community, which is why most of them have left the BTC chain.
So is Blockstream's goal to generate profit or to increase the value of Bitcoin?
So we actually have Green Address also. It's the consumer wallet,
Right.
the mobile wallet. But yeah, largely right now all of our stuff is free. We're mainly focused on R&D. We have been very focused on R&D. We'll have Liquid coming out early next year, hopefully, fingers crossed, and that will be a commercial service that will generate revenue. But the goal is everything will generate revenue. It's not just we're going to build stuff for free forever.
Yeah.
So even for Blockstream Satellite.
What do you think Blockstream's stakeholders' intentions were when they introduced changes under SegWit? Stall. Think about the word Blockstream. So if Bitcoin is a stream, what do you like? You dam it. You put up a dam. They're holding back the potential energy of Bitcoin. They have blocked the stream. Okay, think about it. Think about it real hard. Okay, block everything. Wait it out, patent all your own nonsense, sue Satoshi Nakamoto, sell corporate solutions that make all your lizard friends at MasterCard money. That's what I think is up. That's the plan.
Hey, you. You may have seen something about Bitcoin a few years back. It sounded revolutionary. This was going to replace the banks. It was permissionless, decentralized, peer-to-peer electronic cash. No one can take it from you. You can send any amount for less than a penny, fast. But damn, the price was $100, and it would probably fail anyways, so you better play it safe and see what happens. Then you saw the price recently on the news, $15,000, and immediately your stomach dropped because you realized that how rich you could have been, but you blew it. But you realize that it's still going up fast, and if you invest now, you're probably still on the ground floor. When you finally get your Bitcoin, after waiting 5 hours for it to confirm, you realize that some is missing. Turns out that your small investment of $30, $15 went towards the transfer fee to put it in your wallet. This is what was going to change the world? Let me fill you in on what happened while you were gone. Transaction fees have risen because of the block size. The block size is 1 megabyte currently and only allows for a few transactions per second to take place. Many more happen than this, so the people who pay the highest fee get to go first in line. On December 12, 2017, at the time I'm recording this video, the average transaction fee today was $24.40. This problem only gets worse with time and as adoption spreads. Instead of raising the block size again, the development team has decided to go for a second layer called the Lightning Network. It promises instant transactions, super low fees, and this is the basics of how it works. Let's say me and you transact regularly, so we open a channel for 2 Bitcoins. I send a Bitcoin and you send a Bitcoin to a multi-signature address, where it's temporarily locked away. Now we are free to trade 2 Bitcoins back and forth with no fees, as long as we both sign each transaction. This is because the actual Bitcoin was never moved. We are essentially trading for the rights of the coin, off-chain, similar to an IOU. When we close our channel, it settles on the blockchain. Our IOUs are redeemed, and we get our share of the real Bitcoin. The only time the high transaction fee occurs is when you open or close a channel to settle up. You want to transact with somebody you don't have a direct channel open with. Let's say you want to transact with Bob and pay him 1 Bitcoin. Bob does not currently have an open channel with you, and you don't want to have to pay the fees to open another channel. It turns out that my first cousin Sam has an open channel with Bob. You could send the payments through our channel and use the channel I have open with Sam, and finally from Sam to Bob, paying me and Sam very small transaction fees for using our open channels. This is ideally how the network would work, hopping from individual to individual until your transaction meets the intended recipient. But it turns out if Sam isn't as fortunate as us, and our channel only has 0.5 Bitcoins deposited, this won't work. There has to be enough loaded on each channel along the way for it to be used, and the network must find another route. Luckily, it turns out that Bob and you both eat at the same pizza shop regularly enough that you both have open channels. The pizza shop has plenty of Bitcoin in its channel and is one less hop than the last example. Bob gets paid, less fees for you, and the pizza shop gets a reward for providing a useful service. Everyone wins. Or so it would seem. A problem with the system is the requirement to preload every open channel you have ahead of time, with what you assume will be the upper limit of your spending habits with that channel. It's more convenient to have one open channel and a large amount of Bitcoin to a well-connected party that consistently has more money than you, so you can always route through. This is why hubs will naturally occur. A Lightning hub is a node with enough channels open and enough liquidity available that by connecting them, you limit the amount of channels you need to personally open, never have to worry about their balance, and reduce the amount of hops and fees required to make transactions. Unlike miners, who don't actually transfer value, these hubs will likely be classified as third-party settlement organizations, being subject to heavy financial regulation laws such as KYC and AML. Also, unlike on-chain transactions, there is a chance of theft in this system. If another party attempts to broadcast a channel in an old state, they can try to steal your Bitcoin if you can't catch them in time. For this, you will either need to run a full Bitcoin node that will always be online to monitor the transactions yourself, or hire a third-party service to do this on your behalf. So, the Lightning hubs will require to be set up for financial regulation and reporting laws, require massive amounts of liquidity to keep multiple well-funded open channels, offer fraud departments to watch the blockchain constantly and prevent theft, all while taking small fees for every transaction you route through them. Does this system sound familiar? Just replace the term open channel with checking account. These Lightning Network hubs will be ran by the same financial institutions the Bitcoin was made to challenge. The banks aren't fighting Bitcoin because Bitcoin will be the new banking system. Bitcoin needed no middleman. There was no fraud to detect, no permission to give, no transaction to reverse, no fees to collect. So it had to be broken to need them. And the worst part is, you won't have a choice. Either give up your freedom and use the Lightning Network, or be subject to double or even triple-digit ever-increasing fees for every move you make on the blockchain. The truth is, the 1 megabyte blocks restricting Bitcoin are purposely kept there by the developers. The absurdly high fees and long waits create a demand for a solution, and the solution they give us is the banking industry. The block size restriction was placed as a temporary safeguard by Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. As soon as the blocks were close to being full, it was to be raised again. Satoshi mysteriously left the project in 2010, but before he did, he left instructions on how to raise the block size and left Gavin Anderson in charge of the project. When Satoshi left, institutional money started to make its way in and take control, and a company, Blockstream, emerged. Over time, it happened that a large portion of the development team was part of or hired by this company, and when it came time for another block size increase, there was a portion of the developers that thought this was a bad idea. This just so happened to be the same group of developers that worked for Blockstream. The story of how Blockstream took over is a long and strange one, and I'll have to cover it in another video. But with massive amounts of censorship, organized attacks, and manipulation, Blockstream managed to take primary control over the development of Bitcoin and force out any of the developers who opposed their choices and gave open arms to the ones whose opinions are aligned. Ever since then, the fees have exponentially risen, The confirmation times have grown from minutes to hours to days, and the merchants are dropping support at a rapid rate. The block size should have been raised long ago. It could be raised for years without any risk of centralization, giving us time to find other solutions. But it won't happen, because Blockstream states that they plan to turn a profit by selling sidechains to businesses, allowing them to accept custom Bitcoin-backed chains that aren't subject to Bitcoin's high fees, taking small fees for every transaction, fixed monthly fees from the businesses, and selling the custom hardware needed to run them. This model is far more profitable if Bitcoin doesn't work properly. If the fees are low and no one wants their sidechains, then how will they pay the $74 million back to the corporations and big bankers who have invested, the ones who benefit from the Lightning hubs? This amazing technology, designed to give freedom, stability, and power to the people around the world, has been ripped apart and destroyed for power, control, and profit. But it's okay, because we're going to the moon. There is a problem with the Lightning Network. It doesn't scale, or at least the way we need it to. If you've seen my last two videos, hopefully you understand that routing with the Lightning Network isn't as straightforward as one would expect. It can be summarized into two main issues. One, the Lightning Network is in a constant state of extreme change. Channels are constantly opening and closing, nodes going online and offline, channel states being updated with funds sliding from one side to another. Routing paths may be open and available 1 second, and unavailable or completely gone the next. And two, your node has to be the one that goes through all of this data, find all of the available paths, take into account the number of hops, relay prices, then compare every path and eliminate the possibilities down until the optimal path is found for your payment. This entire pathfinding task is handled by the sending node, which is in most cases either a laptop, smartphone, or Raspberry Pi. And unlike a blockchain, there isn't a network history stored. The network must be mapped from scratch every single transaction. So we eventually hit a ceiling. There's too much data, too many nodes, channels, and change for your hardware to be able to process. Where the ceiling is, we can't be exactly sure. But to quote Rusty Russell, one of the Lightning developers at Blockstream, there are protocol scaling issues and implementation scaling issues. All channel updates are broadcast to everyone. How badly that will suck depends on how fast updates happen, but it's likely to get painful somewhere between 10,000 and 1 million channels. Link in the description. The unknown gap between 10,000 and 1 million channels is pretty wide. It's recommended that each node have around 14 open channels to stay decentralized, and each user must run their own node set. So assuming the average channel count of a user is around 10 or so, the Lightning Network's maximum user base is anywhere between 1,000 and 100,000 users. Coinbase, a single Bitcoin exchange, can have 100,000 new user registrations in a single day. The optimistic maximum user capacity for the Lightning Network is around 1 day worth of new users. What about the users from the past 10 years, and all the new users signing up each day? Routing sort of works now because we're at the lower end of the possible capacity, and users are opening very few channels each. But in the very near future, as the network grows, it will come to a screeching halt. Routing is still completely unsolved. Even the Lightning Network white paper, which is 57 pages long, doesn't even touch on how this will be done. Routing is summarized in a single paragraph that simply states that routing is theoretically possible, without any explanation on how this may be done. Blockchain research company Bitfury wrote a separate white paper on an improved routing method, Flare, which is 38 pages alone. Flare scales to around 100,000 users as well. Routing is just one of the many unsolved problems that Lightning has. It's a very long way off from being able to handle any meaningful number of users, if it's even possible to do in a decentralized way. After years of being constantly told that the Lightning Network is just around the corner and just to wait a few more months, Users are starting to realize that Lightning as an off-chain scaling solution is not quite what it's purported to be. The status of the Lightning Network being unable to scale off-chain to meet any user demand raises an interesting question. Why has the Bitcoin core team completely stopped on-chain scaling? If off-chain scaling is struggling to scale up to a single day's worth of new users, even after 3 years of active development, why then have they become the focus of the BTC chain? Every attempt at raising the block size in the past several years have all been shut down immediately or delegitimized with no compromise. Could it be that on-chain scaling is being halted for other reasons? That's the topic of another video, the conflict of interest in Bitcoin development, how for-profit corporations plan to profit using third-party scaling.
Just one more question, let's make it quick. We do have tomorrow to continue, but one more question.
So since we seem to be in a hyper-confrontational mood today, in Craig Wright's presentation, he made a claim that making the Lightning Network work is as hard as solving the dispute.
Let's give the mic first.
Are
you asking questions or great?
I'm asking questions. So since in Craig Wright's presentation, he argued that making the Lightning Network work is as hard as breaking the discrete log, which is absolutely false, given that for NP-hard problems, it's a widely known fact that we can make heuristic solutions that are very often almost as good in practice, which can often be done in polynomial time. And he claimed that in the context of selfish mining, gamma can be less than 0, which is an absolutely nonsensical claim that makes no sense because gamma is the percentage of the network that is colluding with the miner, which by definition is between 0 and 1. So given that he makes so many non-sequiturs of his takes, why is this fraud allowed to speak at this conference?
How do you think it's changed Bitcoin from the very original version, the one written in the white paper, till now?
No, Bitcoin doesn't change. The error people make is that it's a set fixed protocol. So where people say Bitcoin forked or whatever else, no. There's BTC, which is a ticker symbol, is a new system that is falsely being called Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a chain of digital signatures, unlike SegWit, where they're stripped out. Malleability has a reason. The nature of the structure within Bitcoin is there, and it's designed to be on blocks. It's not this anonymous system. It's not everyone runs a node and all these other democratization of finance scam type things that people talk about. That's the opposite of what Bitcoin was about. So that's what people like Sabo, who's following Lawrence Lessig of the 90s, wanted in their anonymous money thing, which was government will be able to no longer follow our money or whatever else, which only enables crime, fraud, and whatever else. The people who most need anonymous money are criminals, the large ones, and even more governments. The worst person you want to give an anonymous money to is government. Once you have governments with no controls, with no transparency, that you can't see where they're spending money anymore, that's when you have a totalitarian system.
And do you think right now Bitcoin is more a store of value or a payment system?
Well, one, you're talking about BTC, which isn't Bitcoin.
Yes.
BSV is Bitcoin. The way I made it, the whole set in stone is important. Developers do not change Bitcoin. They don't get to vote on what it is or anything like this. Even miners don't do that. Miners enforce rules. The last section of the white paper says miners enforce rules. That isn't they get to vote on them. Enforce is something that a policeman does. But you don't want to give voting power and the ability for a policeman to create rules. If you do that, once again, you end up like something like Chile was for many years, where people decide on the spur of the moment to create laws. So then this whole concept, store of value, it's utterly wrong. Store of value doesn't mean that it's going to go up in price or anything like this. Store of value means the system that you're contracting in on a day-to-day basis will be the same. If you're dealing in euros, the ideal store of value is euros, by definition. If you're dealing in US dollars, the ideal system is US dollars, because it doesn't mean you'll have more money or less money. It means you can plan a year in advance what you need. So if you take out a home loan and your repayments are, say, $2,000 US every month, your store of value has to be US dollars, because you have to pay it in US dollars. The reason gold used to be a store of value was that it was linked directly with US dollars, cable or pounds, and other currencies. When you had a one-to-one mapping from gold to the other, gold would be able to be used in substitution. So you could actually use it directly. This idea it's a store of value, that's bullshit. The only word for it, it is like taking every economic book and burning them and giving people golden book encyclopedias and then hitting them on a hammer until they're smart enough to understand what the crypto world's view of store of value means.
The very main goal is to have a lot of transaction per second.
It was always the goal.
In order to be a method of payment, this is the goal?
It's a micropayment system. Bitcoin was always designed that way. It's actually written that way in the introduction to the white paper. So micropayments means small payments.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people say Satoshi didn't want micropayments because there was a comment that, in one comment, I said when people were talking about 1/10 billionth of a Bitcoin at that point, which was Bitcoin was 10 cents, so 1 trillionth of a cent in value, and saying that it wasn't ready for it yet. A few lines under that, which is ignored by everyone, I said, right now Bitcoin can do small payments in the order of a fraction of a cent. Now that's still a micropayment, 1/10 of a cent or less. We can even do better than that right now. But we were talking about something 1 trillionth of a cent and saying Bitcoin wasn't ready to handle 1 trillionth of a cent. And it wasn't, because it needed value. So I will say now, back 10 years ago, Bitcoin was not ready to handle 1 trillionth of a cent, but it was even then ready to handle, say, 100th of a cent. That Bitcoin is set in stone once the protocol was released.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Nodes order transactions. Basically, they're a notarization service, a timestamping service. Nodes are not users, they're symbols, if they're trying to pretend. Section 5 of the white paper, step by step, details everything a node does, which includes finding and distributing blocks. Not finding blocks and holding them. The way that Bitcoin works is you have to find a block and propagate it to the majority of other nodes, and only nodes are miners and miners are nodes, before anyone else finds a solution and propagates it first. So I didn't say ASIC power. I knew about ASICs. I mean, my first degree was on silicon wafer design. So I've known about ASICs for a long time. I've even developed them. I've got hardware systems that have been run in major companies that I designed. There's a reason I didn't say ASICs. CPU matters, because as Bitcoin scales, things like ECDSA and transaction template validation becomes more and more critical. We're going to see as Bitcoin scales that the hash rate becomes only maybe 20 to 30% of the overall cost, CPU and investment wise. So actually validating transactions, ordering transactions, and the network propagation becomes 70 to 80% of the cost. That's why it says CPU.
Our next speaker, John Matonis, was a huge name when I got into Bitcoin in 2013, and boy, a lot of impressive stuff. I had no idea. I'm not going to read it all to you. Wait, and I don't, is John here? Oh, right there in front. All right, John, I'll just let him have some more time. All right, John Matonis.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a high quality conference. Thanks to the organizers for inviting nChain. I'm John Matonis. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Strategy at nChain. And nChain stands for Radical On-Chain Scaling Solutions. nChain stands for creation of smart contracts using Bitcoin native scripting, which is, by the way, Turing complete. And nChain also stands for microarchitecture modular software, so not monolithic software. You may also remember my name from a year ago when I wrote a blog post called How I Met Satoshi. It was on medium.com. Received a lot of views, so I thank you all for reading that. I want to do something today that's a little bit unusual for a Bitcoin conference. In fact, I don't think it's ever been done before at a Bitcoin conference. I want to donate and turn over the remainder of my speaking time to a colleague of mine from nChain. He is the legend from Sydney, Australia. He is Mr. Bitcoin Dundee, Craig Wright. Okay, first thing is, where's my... Oh, I got the remote. Great. All right, so first of all, what's this about? Anyone know their manga? We have the genesis of a new century. So that's what that's about. This is genesis of a new century. Now, current problem. We have the 7, which really 4 sort of issue. We have this little tiny scaling issue. We have nothing. Okay, see that whole screen? That whole screen is payments. See that little pixel there? That's Bitcoin. That's what we are right now. We are right down there. That little tiny pixel is Bitcoin. We are nothing. We like to think we're something right at the moment. We are not. If we want to be something, we need to scale, and radically, not off-chain, not moving some of the security into side chains and splitting the model. We need to right now, today, start scaling. In 2009, we had more scalability than we do right now. Problem. We have this idea. We have things that are being said. We have people changing the story. We have a lot of 1984 doublespeak. We have people telling us what we should believe. People lying to us about what everyone wants to think. And we're going to change that narrative, not because we want, well, an idea that someone has of an idea, but because we want scientific truth. We want evidence. We want facts. We want more. What we need the unseen. Everyone know our famous little economist journalist from France, the seen and the unseen. Bastiat, who people considered him not an economist. In France, the philosophes said he was not an economist because he says things that are so obvious. The seen and the unseen. We are seeing Bitcoin. We are not seeing the entire system. The entire system is everything we're competing with, which will crush us. We have other things that we're trying to build into the system that will crush us. When we split Bitcoin into millions and millions of pegged systems, when we add inflation, when we create these side chains that, by the way, are patented and are controlled and happen to be owned and happen to be managed and monitored, then we give away the security model. If 100% of everything mines Bitcoin and controls Bitcoin, that's a security model that is hard, that no government can take over, no company can take over, no one takes over. Bitcoin can scale. Right now, what is it? Well, we can't do that. There's no limit on demand. Good. I don't want a limit on demand. I want every person on this globe using not altcoins, not whatever else. I want them using Bitcoin.
I don't want some bullshit argument about, oh, people will use it and it will be bad. Very simple, very easy, good. When every single person on this globe pays for their cup of coffee, pays for their whatever they want, every day using one single central currency, and I'll say central, one distributed central currency that is not controlled, that is hard money. That's what Bitcoin is about. Hard, central, controlled, no one can change money. The problem is central banks inflate. Who here actually knows what the Genesis block message was about? Who's read the Times page? What happened in the page? What was being discussed? They were considering buying the toxic assets. The government was saying the naughty banks who were just given billions to refuse to change their business model and risk their money. Again, and if they don't do it, we're going to buy them and nationalise them. So, great, we're going to incentivise banks further to make crappier loans. What a great thing. No upper limit to scale. Good. Economic game theoretic systems. This is what Bitcoin is about. It is economic. Timing models. 1 vote per CPU. This is a republic. It is not a demagoguery. It is not where people get to yell and scream and lie. And very soon, we're going to change that narrative. Very soon, people are going to discover that when you start lying and when you troll, that there are consequences. So, what is a node? A node is not every little tiny Raspberry Pi running everywhere. The machines running Bitcoin in January 2009 were bigger than every single Raspberry Pi. Not a single one of them. The machines Hell ran, the machines Bear ran. Everyone else who joined this thing at that point had bigger machines running these damn things. And now we have this idea that we can't run it on a little tiny, incy-wincy, insignificant machine. Who cares? What is more important? You having a copy of the blockchain or you having money that no one can manipulate? Honestly, start thinking. These whole utopian ideas of how you spend money are wrong. Economic fundamentals matter. Lightning doesn't work because no one spends that way. I do not go over to Waitrose, or whatever your store is anywhere, and ask them to take a bag of carrots and give me money. That's the bidirectional models. They don't work. I don't go down the road in some big co-op and go, well, I've just made a box of widgets. How about you give me money for it and whatever else? Barter never really existed, ever. What we have now is a system that changes everything. Our new generation, our new Genesis, is the creation of the first ever hard money. The first money that allows for freedom. Gold was never hard because we never had it. When Nixon took America off the gold exchange standard, which wasn't a gold standard, do you know how much of that gold was actually there? Around 5%. So they didn't actually have the gold that they were backing their currency with. So SPP and merchants. Merchants give a rat's. When you go and you pay a merchant, they care that they get the payment. They're the ones who want zero conf. They're the ones who know what they can and can't risk. When you pay a merchant, you don't care that your payment hasn't or has been accepted straight away. You care that you've handed the payment over and you've walked out the store with the goods and you've got a receipt. more than that, who cares? You're not going to sit there and want to validate that the merchant actually got paid. Really, you don't care. So, what we need to move away from these silly ideas that we need to split Bitcoin into little bits so that everyone can own their little bit of Bitcoin. Everyone wants SegWit. 1984 doublespeak. Everyone does not want SegWit. Everyone is being cowed. I'm sure everyone has seen all the fun media about myself and my family. Well, here's the thing for you. I do have those degrees. That so-called PGP key was given to Mr. Maxwell, I would say, because the Australian Tax Office approached Blockstream and asked them about my affairs and dealings in May 2015. The people involved in the tax office have been arrested. So my tax issues are zero. But there are some issues for other people about to come. Because when you lie and when you say things that aren't true, there are consequences. And we're going to make sure that these consequences hit these people hard. SegWit is not scale. That is what we get with a block size increase. That is what we get with SegWit. If you have a 4 meg block, if you have a 16 meg block, you multiply it by 4. That is not scale. What you do to scale is you increase the throughput. And you get more for a 4 meg block than you do any time that you have this split system that needs to be run, that you can't really delete because you have to keep it if you're a merchant, if you're a financial organisation. Saying, oh, well, you can keep it. Where the hell is the actual benefit of deleting stuff that you can't delete? Each transaction requires more bandwidth. It's very simple. It takes more. The answers you've been given about how terrible all this is, run multi-threaded systems. Stop arguing that it needs to be put on Raspberry Pis so that they can lie to you and tell you that it needs to be moved off to other systems. It doesn't. One of the things, we patent. I'm not afraid to say that. Unlike Greg and whatever else, we will choose what we do with our technology. That's not bad. I created things. I get to choose. My choice. I will put some out free. We will put some out otherwise. Our choice. But at the end of the day, scale needs to happen. And it needs to happen now. And it is not quadratic due to all these other problems they're saying. Here's the thing no one's talking about. This quadratic scaling issue. It's added to Bitcoin. It is added. Follow the code base. It is easy to fix. I know several, Bitcrust, Bitcoin Unlimited, and our team all independently picked this out and fixed it. Our team did it in about 3 hours. That's your scalability. Doing multi-threading and putting things off to Xeon Phi cards, any idea how many SIGOPs we can achieve now? Anyone? 500,000 per second. That's scale. And yes, that's a $20,000 machine. Quite frankly, I don't care about Raspberry Pis. If you have been in Bitcoin since 2009 and you can't afford a $20,000 node to help this network, piss off. And I will say that one again. If you will not do this, if you will not help this network, and if you will not take this thing that has given you financial sovereignty, you financial freedom, you financial independence, and help other people by spending a little bit of money on a decent network, fuck off. That's it. O2, poor code, shit code. That's why we need competition. That's why not just Core, anyone should be able to release their own and compete fairly. If you make a better solution and you put it out to market, you compete fairly through competition because people use your product, not because you're cowed into DDoS attacks or anything like that. Not because of all of that. Bitcoin Unlimited found the floor as well. Some of these things that Unlimited have been doing, very innovative. At the end of the day, Moore's Law, our friend. The smallest transistor, well, I've probably been superseded already, but when I've got a paper coming out on this, and the editors picked out that I made a mistake because I said a 2 nanometer transistor. And it turns out there's now a 1 nanometer transistor. When all this happened, people were arguing, because of quantum tunneling, this is impossible. At 6 nanometers, it will never be done. Guess what? It's been done. So stop this, oh, we can't do it. Oh, everything's bad idea. The reality is we need to start being optimistic, positive, build, allow competition, allow free access to code, allow people to actually start competing, not building little walled bloody gardens. Bitcoin, I've got lots of people saying this is bullshit. It's in the code. Flood control, it worked. Why? Because of the value of it. It didn't work way back then, and people could have done these things, and Hell and Bear got their way and put this bloody cap on there. Quite frankly, I'm disgusted with half the community. Anyone know who Bear is? Bear is credit. Bear, that was his name on Reddit and whatever else. Bear was the third person involved properly running nodes and whatever else. You can look up who he is. He's a friend of mine. So one of the things that happened to him, he came on and started talking. Mr. Maxwell, others, ripped the shit out of him. And he's gone back to being a curmudgeon like I like being. He doesn't talk anymore. He doesn't get involved anymore. And he's a shit-hot coder. Better than anyone I have met in any of the core areas, by far. And he's no longer involved. Not because he didn't, his ideas were shit, but because people didn't like what he was saying and shot him down, made death threats against him, added things against his family. That's got to change. Flood control works. If you are getting a big block and someone's paying you to put transactions in there because we want 5 billion people using this, which miner is going to turn it away? If you get paid a little tiny amount per transaction, then you buy another hard drive and you take it. This is capitalism. It is competition. It is brutal and ruthless, and it works. If you can't keep up, bye-bye. Segregated witness, typical problem right now in this bloody industry. Scientific method, it doesn't exist. We just tell people, this is what you're going to do. When you want a scientific process, you come up with an idea and then you test it. Removing incentives. What incentive is there to be a miner of a little bit of a shitcoin settlement for everything else? When you're getting money from everyone. How does Coke make money selling sugar water? They do it because volume. They don't make huge profits because of charging you 99% of the can. They make a fraction of a cent on every can, but they sell a lot. Miners want to make money, then velocity matters. Velocity of money scales the price. If you increase use, you double right now Bitcoin, and velocity formula tells you that you 2 times 0.94 with the inflationary amount times the value. If you scale 100 times, price from velocity alone increases 94 times. What miner will not take 100 times the block size if they get 100 times the fees? Any miner here will say, piss off, I don't want 100 times the amount of value from Bitcoin. No? Okay. Overall, every time we split into side chains, we take away a little bit about what secure is the network. Every time we do that, it becomes less secure. Every time we create an altcoin, less secure. Every competing option that takes something from the overall network makes this once in a lifetime, once in any part of history experiment less viable. Bitcoin differs in that it's the only scarce good that has truly existed. Gold wasn't. Gold has been manipulated, changed, etc. Gold has been flooded. After the Spanish came and discovered the Americas, or rediscovered really, there was something called the reign of gold and the reign of silver. Ships, big galleons, would come in and they would deposit all the silver and gold that they'd taken. And within weeks, it was all gone. No industries were built, just luxuries. And that's that's the difference. As soon as you start inflating things, as soon as you start changing it, allowing side channels, side chains, then, well, you take everything that matters away. Selfish mining. A lot of these problems started because of that. We've got a paper coming out soon. It's gone through editing and all the rest. And there are several versions because my mathematical version is going to scare the shit out of everyone because I actually happen to be a mathematician, so scary word that is. Basically, it's flawed premises. Bitcoin is not a Poisson model. It approximates a Poisson model. When we have these little diagrams people like to do for queuing models, well, one, you would need to use a negative binomial even to be right there, but that's even wrong. They're only correct if you have no deviation, if no one defects. The Poisson is only approximate if everyone is doing what they're meant to do and never changes. So we're releasing the actual mathematics and how things work in Bitcoin, which some people will understand, and those who don't can put it into a computer program, and the computer can simulate it. Then we start getting all these things correct. Now, the model, Emmons deleted every aspect of any code he ever wrote for his model, but luckily I have some. I kept it and archived it for him because, well, he would never want to have the fact that he missed all these things lost to posterity. Now, when you create a model in science, you test it. You don't test your model. That's what we're all doing right now. We're building a model and testing our model. That just tells you you have a model. Who cares? If you can't run it on Bitcoin, who cares? One of the things in Slack channels I've been doing at the moment is I have been incentivizing people to do things I've already done. There is a selfish miner test run on VMs going at the moment. Real VMs, real tests, real whatever else. And I'm funding it. That doesn't mean it's not independent. I have said you get paid because I put it into a third-party escrow either way. I put Bitcoin up to pay for all the VMs and all the testing and all the code, and it will all be public. So it's not just my math. I'm getting it independently verified by other people in the community, over and over. So, Turing completeness. I've had a lot of shit about this one. Guess what? You're all wrong. It is. What you're not going to get is you've missed it. There are actually, we have what is called a decider in Bitcoin. It follows some of the predicate logic of Gödel. Gödel, back around the time of Turing, wrote a lot of mathematics around the ideas of predicate systems. If you're a mathematician, you would know this shit. But not everyone is. So, Bitcoin is a 2 PDA. Now, 2 PDA, all those little squigglies there, unfortunately, once again, they're actually from one of the papers I've got coming out. Those little squigglies actually mean that it is Turing complete. I'm not going to explain that to you right at the moment. I'm going to say that. Anyone recognize what that is? That's a Wolfram 110. Anyone know what a Wolfram 110 is? It is the simplest Turing complete system. That's in Bitcoin. It was running until a few months ago. We had PSOs in Bitcoin running. They died. Unfortunately, they starved to death before fees. So we had the first self-evolving code in Bitcoin that ran for 2 years, and there are people who know about these now, that's why I'm mentioning them. They've been discovered. It's not just me. They're dead because they can't afford the fees. And I'm not going to fund a thing that requires $3 every bloody block to keep running. It becomes expensive very quickly. When it's low fees, all sorts of things can run. So, these are there. IP to IP transactions. Does no one look at the old code anymore? We keep saying this is not meant to be there. The market database in Bitcoin allowed IP to IP transactions. There was a reason for these. The whole idea is to have a POS merchant type solution. I should be able to go up and just tap something. And I don't even give a shit, honestly, whether my transaction has settled properly. All I care about is going up to the merchant, and the merchant will propagate my transaction. Why will the merchant propagate my transaction? Because they want to get paid. Merchants are not going to sit there and go, well, maybe at the end of the month I'll run all this shit. They won't, because you will double spend. Merchants have the incentive to ensure that ZeroConf works right now. Why? Because they want to be paid. It's very simple. Economics makes this work. It is not security toys. It is not any of these little fluffy bits of crap that we say are really securing the network. I've worked in the security industry for a long time. I've been a pariah in that industry a long time because I, way back when, have said economics matters. I'm on Richard Bellich's site as Security Clown because I put a risk algorithm that everyone takes a little tiny bit out of context and says, do you know where that risk algorithm is used right now? When you have two-factor and you get SMS and other updates to your phone for internet banking, that's that algorithm. So my fluffy little piece of crap algorithm happens to be running on banks globally. So he can call me a clown all he wants. Quite simply, I got paid for it, I don't care. Wallets to merchants. We need to start building better wallets. I cannot do front ends to save myself. I'm a good low-level coder. I can do library code, things like that. Other people can do other things. My front ends suck. Now, here's the thing. We've had 8 years. And do you know how good our front ends are in Bitcoin? They suck. All of them. I don't care who gets offended on this one. Every one of our bloody front ends right at the moment, our wallets suck. We need competition in that. We need people making really shit easy ones. When I started De Morgan in Australia as sort of a line of companies and whatever else, before I moved out here, the thing I gave to our staff and what I want, my grandmother has to be able to use this. My grandmother has to be able to just make a payment. She doesn't use computers, although, I mean, my grandfather, before he died, was one of the earliest users of computers in Australia and all the rest, with Melbourne IT and other things he did. My grandmother stays away. She's 96 and she's not going to change. But she needs to be able to use money. The early days, we had poker nodes in Bitcoin. We had merchant databases in Bitcoin. All of this has been stripped. It shouldn't be in the main core protocol. Wallets need to be developed independently. Why? Because that's how they compete. We don't want one. We want a world using Bitcoin. That simple. We want it secure, and we want it able to be used between many people. Replaceable transactions versus replace by fee. Replace by fee is the biggest piece of shit ever created. And I'm going to say that very nicely because that's not actually what I feel about it. But I've been told I'm not allowed to actually say my true feelings, so I'll just put it lightly, which it's complete utter shit. Replaceable transactions. When you hadn't broadcast something to the network and you were negotiating a payment channel, that was valid. Why? Because you're negotiating. When you send it to a miner and you allow a miner to start playing with it, zero confirmation doesn't work. Risk is not perfect. Every system, everyone is probabilistic. There is no single system ever created that is not probabilistic in security. Does anyone here know what Alan Turing was before he became famous as a cryptographer? He was a Bayesian statistician. In the early days, statistics and Bayes theory and things like that were the core of creating risk-based systems. Right now, we seem to have forgotten that. We seem to have forgotten that we cannot ever get a perfect system. We don't drive around in tanks. We drive in cars. We fly. Anyone here done something stupid, like bungee jumping or jumping out of a plane? Yes, I have. I pushed our kids out of the plane too. And not because they gave me the shits either. What we need are payment systems. We need merchants who give a shit. Merchants will do these things. If we start doing unlimited block size strategies where we just allow things to grow, our cost goes there. Visa cost goes there. We can run cheaper than Visa on our network right now. We can scale bigger than Visa right now. And here is the thing that they're lying to you about. The bloody bullshit from people like Luke and everyone in Core. What they really want to destroy is corporate companies. That's what they fear. Companies do not act together. Companies are people. You can own shares in a company. You can start a company. You can control a company. You can compete. But if you can't compete, buy and let someone else do it for you. Companies aren't evil. Some companies are. Some companies aren't. Some people are. Some people aren't. It is always about the incentives. And at the end of the day, this is our incentive. If we have 100,000 nodes and we have that because of merchants, we have a system that is more distributed than Bitcoin right now or any other system. And we can actually do that right now. If we get away from the idea that every single person needs to run a bloody Raspberry Pi and start scaling, then we get real financial sovereignty for everyone. Not manipulated money, not altered money, real, hard, free currency. And that's what this is about. Whenever you hear someone who's an anarchist or socialist, and I'm not going to get into the debate about a anarcho-capitalist type thing, that's a different thing altogether, but I mean a socialist anarchist or whatever else, the issue is they're anarchist because they're not the ones in power. That's all they want. They don't want your freedom, they want control. What we have is not running your node. That is a myth. What we have is we scale. We scale big. Then no one stops it. No government stops it. No company takes control. We scale, we win. So, if we look at this little Moore's Law bit, we have storage grows. At home, I'm one of these evil people who actually have invested lots of electricity sucking power away, and do my best to make sure that I take all that sort of electricity and make heat and help global warming or whatever else, because at home I've got several petabytes worth of storage, and that's my home. And each of these people who say we should not be part of running things out big, who have been there for a long time, again, time to wake up and start actually supporting the network or piss off. We want to scale big time. Now, what we need to do, Moore's Law is going to continue, like it or not. To paraphrase a quote from Greg, if we just rely on Moore's Law, that's not a real scaling solution because we haven't done anything. Who cares? It works. If other people create systems that make our life easier, why is that bad? If we scale 1,000 times in 10 years, that's good. Over time, it will get bigger and bigger. It will get used more and more. As Peter's so afraid of, there is no top. And if there's no top, good. The faster, the higher the velocity of money, the more it's worth. Linear growth, who cares? We have number of Bitcoin transactions. If we scale, we go past Visa, we go past MasterCard, and we get to a point where we exceed all global transactions. Then we succeed. When we get, in this number of years, way past everyone else, we win. There is no attacks of centralization or anything like that. It becomes too big. When it's small, it's easy to stop. It's easy to manipulate. It's easy to control. When you add sidechains, when you add other things that take away from the core of the network, you steal the security model. You steal the value. When you do this, that's what destroys Bitcoin. We have an unlimited block strategy. Stop thinking short term. We're not. I'm here not for the short term. Like it or not, you're not getting rid of me. We're going to be here 20 years. And it's very simple. We'll help create, release, and aid with code development that is not going to be taking from the core system. We will scale radically. And if you don't want to come along, stiff shit. I don't care. I'm not going to be nice like Jimmy wants. It's very simple. You're with us or you're against us. And if you want to be against, that's your problem. we're going to compete, but we're going to compete by growing the value. And we're going to make this grow rapidly, because when it grows, that's where the value happens. Connection. We want easy connectivity, easy use. We want people to be attracted to using it because it is safe and secure and simple. And flow. We want an exchange of value. All those things that make economics work. We want to remove the block cap. We want to have a non-SegWit pool. And we're going to announce that too. We're going to create a pool that will not run SegWit. We will build up a non-SegWit pool and we will fund it. And if we see SegWit transactions, we'll reject them. That simple. So I talked about a cartel, and I'm not going to run the cartel, but we're going to reject SegWit transactions. So if someone else runs it, I don't care, but I don't accept SegWit. I'm not going to. And we are going to build a pool that doesn't do that. And anyone who wants to join in that, great. If we see SegWit, we'll reject it. Out of hand, full stop. And we can do that. You advertise both parts of the chain. So we will watch for SegWit transactions, not pay to script hash generally, SegWit. And anything SegWit, bye-bye. Which means you're slower. Because we will take at least 20% of the market. And we will do that. And we will build that pool. And it's coming very soon. And if you want to be slower, run SegWit.
But that requires a hard fork. That will require a hard fork. You can't just run a pool and reject the transactions. You don't even include SegWit in the block.
I don't need to include it. I don't need to hard fork. I, as a miner, choose. People don't choose what I do as a miner. I can reject a block anytime I want. It is about time that the miners started realizing their role in this industry. The miners set the rules, not every user, not everyone out there. Network distribution. You're all wrong. Giant node versus outlying wallets. These are connectivity graphs. What we have in Bitcoin is as we get more and more connectivity, we get more and more reachability. This is how it actually works. What we have in Bitcoin is not all these other things where people are talking about power law, scale free, etc. They are not Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was always economic. Any node gets more connectivity over time. That is part of the protocol. The bigger your node is, the bigger the number of connection pools. If you run a Raspberry Pi, you are cutting yourself off from most of the network. In graph theory, it is not how many vertices. It is the edges that matter. It is the connectivity between the graph that matters. So you're all getting it wrong. Very simple. You don't do node count. Node count is shit. It has zero relevance. Read the mathematics. Zero. That is Bitcoin. That is the actual model of Bitcoin. Those grey areas in the middle, that is the connectivity between the main nodes. It is that dense. There's a distance in Bitcoin of D equals 1.32. Later this year, I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we're going to start releasing data. I don't know how, because we have petabytes. That is also part of it. It is bigger than a small world model. It is not anything that people are talking about. It is not a mesh. You send one transaction in 2.3 seconds once it hits the network, 99.98% of the hash power has your transaction. It can take 25 seconds to get to 99% of the network, but it's the hash power that matters. Who gives a rat's if your little Raspberry Pi gets it late? You're not going to put it in a block anyway. If you don't have it in a block, it isn't part of Bitcoin. That's drilling into that network. This is what people think it is. This is what Lightning is. It's a mesh with lots of little hops, central nodes, etc. Red balloons and Bitcoin. A group of Microsoft mathematicians went over and did the mathematics behind sibling and other things. Any network with a distance of 3+ can always be sibled. Mathematically proven, always. Every time you do it. That Lightning can have 80 hops. Not 8, 80. That means it is always vulnerable to attack. Not sometimes, always. It is mathematically proven. Read the paper, read their results. Bitcoin doesn't get Sybil's because it has a distance under 3. What we end up with is Bitcoin. The problem, people don't get the difference in words. Bitcoin is highly centralized because it has high centrality. That Lightning Mesh is actually more of what we are arguing is centralized. In mathematical terms, Bitcoin is more distributed than any network globally has ever been. It has less chance of ever being hijacked than anything that has ever been created. There's a recent paper on routing in Bitcoin. It's wrong. Not because you can't hijack ASNs, but because there are so many links. You can knock a node off and attack an individual, but you don't need to take over an ASN to do that. Now, what they also failed to say is if you did that attack, you would take over 99% of commercial internet providers. You would take over every military network on Earth. You would take over all of the telecoms links. And do you think attacking all these core routers and doing that will be allowable just because it's Bitcoin? I mean, honestly, folks, to attack these routers and take over the core BGP systems, well, not going to happen. Yes, ISPs can make you part of the, well, they can prune you. Have 2. Use your phone. Use 3G. Whatever. Multi-home. So, it is a semi-complete ring. It is actually bigger than a small world network. These transaction graphs people keep doing are not Bitcoin. They are how economics works. When you have a transaction graph of transactions going from party A to B to C to D, that's how people spend money, not how nodes connect. Have we not thought about that? You can't model Bitcoin looking at how transactions flow between addresses. You look at the connectivity from the nodes. There are 1.2 million edges just over on the Bitcoin network right now. The entire UASF pool has 36,500 edges. Any idea what effect they have? Well, about 0.3%. They can 0.3% the network as they isolate themselves and do nothing. As I said, I have no idea how the hell we're going to get it out. We're going to start doing something to get Jimmy and others will have fun trying to arrange this. I've just got a shitload of data. There's petabytes. I have no idea how the hell we're going to distribute it. That's other people's problems. I'm good at making those. So we have data going back to actually January 2009. It's been captured since then, right down to network dumps and the works. So scale, growth, and vision. We need to scale. We need real leadership. There should be no king in Bitcoin. There will be no king in Bitcoin. We are a community, and it is time we start acting like one. There are a few things happening, and they will become very public very soon. But Jimmy and things will get really upset if I start talking about them right now. So blame Jimmy. Everyone, that's Jimmy. Okay, we need sustainable operations. We need innovation. We need to attract companies. Not like Luke and his, oh, we want to keep away these companies. We need to attract companies. We want banks to use Bitcoin. And if you don't, then I don't care. I'm going to make it happen. Very simple. You don't like it, find an altcoin and compete with me. But split off Bitcoin and compete with me. And we're going to compete hard. Co-opetition. You can help us, you can try and harm us, but at the end of the day, I want fee-based controls. I want people to use Bitcoin as much as you want them to. We want this global. I don't want a few geeks using Bitcoin. I want my grandmother buying her gum or whatever else on Bitcoin. When that happens, when some small individual who doesn't matter to most of us uses Bitcoin, it succeeds. I was in Ghana a few years ago. In Ghana, you see these half-built houses, and people are proud of them. Any idea why people have all these half-built houses? Well, no bank mortgages, yes, but it's also saving. They go out there, every now and again, they buy a bag of cement, they buy some more bricks, and they build another wall. They can't sell the house until it's finished, but it's an incentive. They can then invest and save. Right now, they can't use a bank. They can't hide money because it'll be stolen. They'll be extorted. Bitcoin means that they have a real alternative. It is proper financial sovereignty, not because they run a bloody node, because they have their keys. One of the things that we have coming very shortly, it's in our first lot of patents that are coming out, we have a split key system. So exchanges and wallets and whatever else will never have control. You and the other party can use a type 1 Bitcoin address and no one has control. The exchange cannot steal your money. There will never, ever be a Mt. Gox ever on this. You can't cheat the exchange either. They will be happy because you can't lie, you can't cheat, you can't steal. Between all of that, then we don't need trust. Right now, we are building systems that are just like we had before. So, yes, we have some new code and new things coming out, and that will enable you to have split keys. Not because you've got a USB key or whatever else, or whatever other hardware wallets are out there, but because you can have a shared key infrastructure where you and the exchange both act together. So, fee structures, I'll talk to people about that if they want later, but the idea is we want something that scales. We want innovation, development, profitability. Profit does not go down to zero. profit goes to the innovators, those who create. If you make something that is better, a faster ASIC, a faster wallet, a faster SIGOP, get paid for it. That's what Bitcoin is really about. It is not socialist, it is libertarian. That is capitalist. Not crony capitalism, not getting money from government. Capitalism, where people compete. So we are going to add structures to make sure that DDoS doesn't happen. In case people don't know, my past has been with casinos for a long time. I've done a lot of things right back from Lassiter's. I set up the first internet casino that had a license. That was me and my company. And we've been attempted to be DOSed and attempted to be knocked off and attempted to be basically screwed by everyone who wants to take money and extort us for many years. Whether it's poker, whether it's gaming, whether it's whatever else. And it's controllable and stoppable. And we're going to ensure, with what we're setting up, that miners and others know how to run a proper network without being knocked off the damn network. Future, we want to increase revenue streams. Everyone, and I mean everyone, should be making money here. We want to ensure that we have transaction and custodial-based revenue. Not us, everyone. This is a big, big potential industry. This is something that is global in nature. We are getting there. We're nearly at 10. 10 years. We should be competing with Visa now. Not later, not whatever else, now. It is coming up on 10 years. That is 1,000 times the scale. And we are not growing. $30 billion is not big. $30 billion is pissant. That dot there, Bitcoin, when that dot there is everything, we have succeeded. And only when it is everything. Thank you.
Can you take questions?
Sorry? Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah. Questions?
All right. Oh, sorry. All right. Here. Please on here, because this is being live streamed, I found out, and I'll get you.
Nakamoto, I have dual questions. So first, concerning your blog post about you proving to be Satoshi, why had it a fake proof? And secondly, someone mentioned it already, it will be a hard fork what you are proposing. So will you dump your millions of Bitcoins on the old chain and buy your new Bitcoin Unlimited coins? That's my question.
Quite frankly, none of your business. I have my economic sovereignty. I am financially secure. I'll do whatever the fuck I want with my money. That's the nature of Bitcoin. It is about financial sovereignty. And that means not answering to anyone about what the fuck I want to do.
And the first part of the question?
Did you actually read the post?
Yes.
Then obviously you didn't get it. Yeah, and I never said anything other than the Sartre bit. Did you actually know what Sartre said? If I sign Nobel Prize winner, I am not the same. There is no fucking king. There is no glorious leader. One thing I will do, yes, someone got it right. I am here to kill off Satoshi. Not in the way that you want, because there is not going to be some great leader standing above. It is not going to be what Core tried to do with Nick. There is not going to be one person that we come and answer to. It will be the best ideas, the best solutions. Not because you think they're the best, because the market does. And the market votes with their dollars. And eventually, the market is going to vote with their bloody Bitcoins. That is the governance model of Bitcoin. If you don't like it, you change the code by hard fork. And if people follow you, you win. If you don't, you lose money. That's called capitalism, folks. Bitcoin is capitalist. It is not socialist. It was never, ever, ever designed to be socialist. It can't be. The bigger your node is, the more the edges you hold. That is a matter of economics. If you have a bigger node than the guy next door with a Raspberry Pi, you get better connectivity. Yes.
All right, yeah, and everyone, let's talk through these so we can record this for posterity. Start with you. You can be next.
Thank you. You were talking about starting a mining pool and
yes.
Not accepting SegWit transactions. Did you mean not accepting them in your own blocks or not accepting a chain with SegWit transactions in them? Because I think that's where some of the hard fork questions are coming from.
We may do both. There will be definitely a pool that won't accept them and mine them, depending on what happens and what other people who join the pool desire, because this is what capitalism is about.
So it could be a potential hard fork then?
Could be, yes.
All right, thank you.
I have two questions. Seek your opinion on subchains to improve zero-conf security with weak blocks, and your opinions on transaction malleability and if, for the IDs and if that has to be fixed.
I'll answer the second one first. No, it doesn't. There is no need to fix it. There are ways of doing it with pay to child. There are other things that can be done. In fact, there are also uses for malleability. On top of that, you can create malleable signatures that don't change. You are able to create a payment address without using the private key. You basically create a paid to address and transaction that is self-signed, and you then pay to that address, and that's the chain. If the thing is malleated and doesn't go to the transaction, it all fails and it all falls apart. Otherwise, you have an unmalleable transaction. You can do that because of the nature of ECDSA. Basically, instead of calculating using the K value and whatever else, the random, you change it round and you have a key based on the random and then calculate the respondent sort of public-private key pair after the signature. So you reverse the math, and it is actually reversible that way.
Interesting. So the second thing was on subchains.
If they're valid and they compete and whatever else, and they don't take away from the main model of Bitcoin, then great. All for it.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions? All right, way back here. Wow, this is a long room. Here you go.
Hello, thank you for speaking. I was just wondering if you could directly address Ethereum scaling, and Ethereum security, and kind of broadly your thoughts on Ethereum and how it's kind of taken a much larger role in this ecosystem. And thank you.
Okay, May 2013, I got a whole pile of shit from Mr. Peter Todd because I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm still a Bitcoin maximalist. Thank you.
Thank you for being here in Arnhem. We really appreciate. Could you reflect on when you wrote a paper in 2008, if you could have made 3 changes to basically beat Visa at this very moment? What are the 3 changes you would have made in the first level of the software, the first version of the software?
I will never confirm nor deny the first part of that. But what I will say, if I was answering in that way, my comment would be, the first bit would be making sure that there were better front ends. I mean, the front end to Bitcoin sucks. I would also make sure that the flood control didn't disappear with a cap.
that should have been fought a lot harder, but if you actually read the history there, Ray and Hell had different ideas. Both of them didn't think the idea of non-inflationary money would work because government would stop it, whatever else. So that would be something that should have been fought harder for, but anyway, that's a different issue. So 3 things. Some better explanations and better help guides would have been great. Not in the code, but outside the code. If you read the early version of the code, you will find a lot of comments. You will find explanations of why things are done. You will find other things. The market database, I would say, probably should have been pushed a lot harder. A POS system. There should have been something that helped merchants and actually got them to understand this. It was allowed to be stripped out. It shouldn't have been. It's important. It does, I mean, you can build it now and it won't change the base protocol. So no hard fork, no whatever else. IP to IP transactions don't require a hard fork, don't require a soft fork, don't require anything else. It just requires someone to build it. So.
Hello, my name is Ken Shishido. I am a Tokyo Meetup Group organizer since 2013. Have personally hosted 157 meetups since then. I have a simple question. Why do you think Satoshi used Japanese name? Is there any specific reason? I just would like to know your opinion. Thank you.
Well, I had a single mother, and one of the guys who helped bring me up was Japanese, and I'm sure he would find it very cool because I thought it was a cool culture. I mean, the whole idea of Japanese culture in many ways is exciting. It reminds me of some of the Roman Empire back before they became no longer a republic. It's people actually working together, not the same sort of competition we think we need to have in the West, but people working actively together, including companies. You don't see many companies in the West pulling together in co-opetition anymore. We seem to think we need to actually fight each other, that it's a zero-sum game. But trade isn't a zero-sum game. There was a Tokugawa period philosopher who talked about trade in Japan. He happens to have, well, part of the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. His name was Nakamoto. And he wrote about how Japan needed to open up and have trade with the West, that we need to work together and it will build a big, strong country. And we need to work together and build a big, strong Bitcoin. It doesn't matter whether we like each other, whatever else, we're all in the same boat. We are not here to try and stifle Bitcoin. We want Bitcoin to be the financial sovereignty and security mechanism for the world. It is not just censorship resistance. We get that by being big. If 5 billion people are using Bitcoin, there is no censorship. You try and tell me if 17,000 banks, and there are 17,000 banks on Earth, only run nodes, which is more than we have now, if only those banks run them, you tell me that they're going to collude together. When was the last time you saw a successful cartel in real life actually stay together? They don't. They all require government aid. Even De Beers is falling apart. De Beers was the longest cartel in history because they owned governments. They owned Rhodesia. They owned Sierra Leone. They don't anymore. So even they are falling apart.
Oh, yeah. Get some else here.
Hi. What do you think is going to happen to governments when Bitcoin does take over?
One, they're going to have to be honest. I don't know if they can actually do that, but they're going to have to learn because they can't manipulate the money anymore. If you have a money supply that everyone uses, even if they have fiat and they require payment in fiat, then you can just exchange. And if they print more fiat, your Bitcoin goes up in value. So it becomes a situation like we had in Zimbabwe. They quickly try and print more money and you become more valuable. And they try and print more and they make a race to the bottom for themselves. So either they start actually not lying, they start being honest about things and start treating all their policies economically, or they die. And by economically, I mean every time you make some bullshit political statement saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z, it comes at a cost. Everything is economic. Every life you save is a life that you sacrifice. When you take money away to give to healthcare, there are other uses. Money is a scarce good. Scarce economic goods have alternative uses. You always have things at the margin and you always have to trade one for the other. There is never everything. It is always a choice and they have to start being honest in that choice.
Hi. What would be the tangible opportunities for Bitcoin in the world of B2B, I mean?
Business to business?
Business to business, exactly. And this is the first question. And the second question would be about the new credit cards, Visa cards, which are linked to Bitcoin, and they just, do the instant exchange, like BitPay.
Great. The more we get Bitcoin used, the more velocity. B2B, what can't we do? We could actually start linking everything. B2B is huge. If you think about all of the required paperwork that is still there, there are so many areas in this world that have not been computerized yet or are only starting to be. Why don't we grab them, put them on the blockchain and make them part of Bitcoin? When an oil tanker comes in right at the moment, it's carrying billions of dollars worth of funds. Why don't we actually have receipts and transactions put on op returns? No, it's not spam. If people are paying for a transaction, it's not spam. Sorry, Luke, not spam. If you have things that you're signing and storing on the blockchain and you're paying for it, it's not spam. Now, yes, you have to keep that there forever. Some people do. People can prune depending on your legal requirements. But if you need to keep it, you don't need to worry because storage doubles faster than Moore's law. If storage is doubling faster than Moore's law, think about it. Right at the moment, anyone, all right, first question, who knows the biggest hard drive that is now released? No. Double it. Yeah. And there's another 200 one coming out this year. They cost a shitload of money, but everything costs a shitload of money when it's first and new. So they're getting bigger. Now, if you're doubling and the blockchain's doubling, basically your cost of storage is not doubling. It's not exponential, as everyone thinks. It's logistic. All growth curves are logistic. That means it is an S-curve. It goes up, it looks exponential, and then it tapers off. Because we've got this little problem here with Bitcoin adoption. Once we hit 5 billion people, it's really, really hard to get the 6 billion. Because trying to get your 3-year-old to start Bitcoin wallets and trade, I mean, it's possible, but it's really not going to be worth it. So B2B, everything. Every industry. Everything.
Hello. Thank you for coming. As far as I understand, you told us that there should be no king with the Bitcoin ecosystems. However, I feel like your presentation sounds like I'm the king and follow me. How do you think about this?
I'm not. I'm a pariah. I'm an evil person that some people like to call fraud. Some of those are going to discover the legal consequences very soon. Well, won't say exactly when and won't say who quite yet, but they're coming. I am part of a company. I want your service. To get that, I need to treat my customers right. Unlike Core, unlike Blockstream, I'm not going to shove shit down your throat and make you eat it. I will dominate only if people want me to economically, not as an authority, because we bring solutions that people want to use. We will succeed or fail, not because I'm going to be a king, not because I'm the authority and tell you what's right, but because we build things that you want to use. And if you don't want to use it, but 100 million other people do, good.
All right, we're going to run out of time for our lunch here, so I don't know if this is going to be the last question. Let's see.
I can't resist to ask another technical one. And first I want to say thanks for all your contributions. The split key thing, type 1, could you expand on that? Are you talking about multiplying the private keys? And then how would the signature work between the exchange and the user? And what's the advantage versus a type 3 multi-sig pay-to-script hash?
Smaller transaction. Rather than having to actually sign on chain, you can have wallet-based signature systems. You can distribute things and have calculations that are done and completed off-chain and then complete on-chain for validation. So many uses. At the moment, every time you want to expand your signature system and get it bigger and bigger, you make a bigger transaction. With what we're talking about, we can have a N is up to 100 billion by M is up to 100 billion system.
And do you protect against all the keys being in the same location at the same time?
Yes, they won't be. As a user, you'll have something on your phone, a card, a smart card, or whatever else. The system will then be open for people to license, buy, whatever else as well, and to extend. I don't want to build everything for the world. I want to give solutions because people build shit better than I do, especially front ends.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't know. If anyone is really hungry, I mean, go ahead and start taking off downstairs. One more question.
Hi, Craig. Thank you so much for the information session this morning. I am actually from South Africa, and you mentioned 2 scenarios and case studies of Ghana and Zimbabwe. My question is because I was at a conference in Zimbabwe, I think a month ago. You know, they have, you rightfully say, you know, the price for Bitcoin will go up. But the challenges in some of the countries, especially in Africa, is that there isn't a lot of exchanges where people could buy Bitcoin freely. And that even though people want to get Bitcoin in Zimbabwe, for example, there's limited places for them to get it. Another issue they currently having is that they have a limit of $200 to take out of the country every day. So there's real, you know, issues in some parts of Africa where even though we'd like to drive Bitcoin, you know, there's a lot of obstacles.
That goes down to the whole node versus everything else. We need to make simple solutions. We need to make things that can't be taken and can't be stolen. The idea of a split key system also means that if the exchange is raided, who cares? You can recover your keys after a time lock. If the exchange is hacked, you lose nothing other than time. If you are pulled up, then your keys are still recoverable afterwards, which means you're not actually carrying Bitcoin. You have a reason, an access point to get it later, and that can be secured. So what we need to do, as I've been saying, is make simple solutions for people, not try and get everyone to run nodes, to open up financial sovereignty to people everywhere. And that means a lot of Africans, a lot of Indians, and whatever else. Most people have phones, more and more every day. Phones are getting cheaper every day. There was a stupid plan years ago, back when I was doing some military contract work, where the Americans actually looked at Moore's Law, and one of their ways of potential by about 2020 of disseminating information to North Korea was dropping millions of tablets, because they figured there'd be tablet computers that would translate into North Korean by 2020 that they could do for $1 each. And they could just drop them around to villages and have access to people and allow internet access, which would basically ruin control. We need to create simple solutions that anyone can use. We need to open up access, and we need to build wallets that are simple to use, that work on any phone. Not because you have a node, but safely because you can tap your phone to another person's and exchange. That's what we need to do. People argue about whether Bitcoin is a commodity or not. Now, it's quite simple, it is, but so is money. Throughout history, whether we're talking about gold or fiat itself, the value of exchange there is something that can have other uses. It's only recently that we've come into a unpegged currency that has no real relationship into anything. I mean, up until the 30s, we had a gold exchange standard, which most people don't even realize wasn't a gold standard. It involved less than 5% of the actual gold that was on the books in America was actually held. So there's always been a commoditization of money. And in fact, it is the ultimate commodity. It's the exchange protocol that we use for about everything else. So Bitcoin is a commodity for the simple fact that money is a commodity.
Okay, and so I think I tweeted something back to, I mean, no one knows me to be provocative or snarky, so, but as you said, there's been a discussion over whether or not it's a commodity or a currency, and that's primarily been for the purpose of taxation and such. And I think I said something to the effect of, oh, so it can therefore be taxed as a currency and a commodity, and you said neither. So how is it that you feel about, obviously it's a peer-to-peer currency and protocol that you don't want government involvement in?
A lot more than anything. I mean, that's looking at it too small. Obviously, unfortunately, not many people seem to have knowledge of assembly code or forth or anything like that anymore. And I listened to one of Nick's earlier talks, and he was talking about the limitations. But in machine code, there's none of these limitations. And in fact, we have a rather rich instruction set in Bitcoin. It's just not well defined yet. And then the next part is we have the Ethereum going out there saying we need to build a new stack because we can't loop. But no one seems to realize that Forth actually does loop. You have to use a separate control stack. It's not like a lot of code forms where you actually have a single stack. Forth and Forth-like languages use a dual stack architecture. So everything that we're talking about in derived contracts can actually be done directly in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin protocol. It's just going to take time for people to understand it.
Since you mentioned Nick, then I'm going to allow him to respond to that. You need your microphone though, sweet, or the water.
No, I have not heard that opinion before. I've never heard anybody call the Bitcoin script Turing complete. I don't believe that's accurate.
He just said you're wrong.
The difference is the script itself isn't. What you can do is you have in Forth a control loop. So the looping function is separate to the actual loop, the
the script itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's an esoteric thing. If it's not Turing complete, then it's not a general purpose language like Ethereum, regardless of
But that would
that
assume
partial
that the only way of actually
type of thing.
writing code would be to do it directly in a script that runs on the machine.
I think Bitcoin would probably be a good solution to that. However, it is a bit slow and the transaction fees are kind of high.
He's talking about BTC, not the original Bitcoin. It really is slow and expensive to use. I couldn't resist showing him just how quick and cheap transactions are on the BSV network.
See, have you got that on your phone?
Yep. And this one actually shows up immediately.
I know, it's good.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Locals might not be riding off into the sunset with their Bitcoin wallets anytime soon, but it's clear that Bitcoin SV could have a really positive impact here. But sitting here right now, I'm reminded that some of the best things in life are free, just like this Caribbean evening here.
Here are 3 reasons why you should consider getting BSV instead of BTC. Number 1, in 2015, a man named Craig Wright told the Bitcoin core team Bitcoin was actually a Turing-complete commodity. The easiest way to show this is by replacing a while loop during iteration with an if statement with the same condition and the while loop nested inside after the body of the statement. Number 2, the original Bitcoin does not have SegWit. Segregated witness supposedly saves some data, but it actually doesn't save a lot of data. The main thing that it does is it removes legal responsibility for transactions since the digital signatures are no longer there with the transactions, making it harder to enforce any sort of contracts or payments as part of law. It also makes it harder to track down criminals or find children who are being trafficked. Number 3, BSV is about 1,000,000 times more efficient than BTC, making it more useful than using Visa or MasterCard with US dollars. There's no limit on the block size, and the SHA-256 hashes that are used to verify previous blocks are the same hashes used to verify a transaction's location in a Merkle tree, so that the path all the way up to the block can be saved with the transaction, allowing any transaction, no matter how big the blocks are, to be verified by a small app. And on top of that, it's still cheaper to purchase. By the time there's 21 million of each, so which one do you think would be worth more owning now?
Alright, in this video I'm going to give an introduction to Bitcoin SV. Now, the easiest way of understanding Bitcoin SV, or Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, is that it's just Bitcoin, okay? Because it follows the original protocol that's laid out in the white paper and the early writings of Satoshi. Okay, so here's the white paper, and here's the early writings of Satoshi. Now, one of the things that most people don't realize is that BTC no longer follows what's in the white paper and the early writings of Satoshi. Okay, so if this dotted line is the original protocol design, BTC has gone way off the path. Okay, they've added a bunch of things like segregated witness and the Lightning Network. Okay, and a lot of the core features and use cases for Bitcoin don't work on BTC. Okay, and we'll talk about those later. But the whole purpose for Bitcoin SV is just to go back to this original protocol. Okay, so when I say that the easiest way of understanding Bitcoin SV is that it's Bitcoin, okay, it's because it just follows this original protocol, this original definition of what Bitcoin is. Because remember, the term Bitcoin was defined in the white paper and the early writings of Satoshi. Okay, and Bitcoin SV just follows that. Now, for BTC to call themselves Bitcoin, even though they no longer follow what's in the white paper where the term Bitcoin was defined, okay, it doesn't really make sense. It's not accurate. Now, people will argue with that and they'll say, well, look, Kevin, software projects evolve and change, and you can't expect iOS 15 to be the same as iOS version 1. Okay, and they use this as a justification to say that BTC is just the new updated version. Okay, now that sounds nice, but it's wrong, okay, for a couple of reasons. The first reason it's wrong is because Bitcoin is meant to be a base layer protocol. Okay, it's meant to be like TCP. Okay, and TCP, of course, is a base layer protocol of the internet. Okay, and TCP, okay, has literally not changed in decades, okay, because it's a foundational protocol. It's like the foundation of a house, okay, and if you change the foundation, you break the whole house, you break all the other layers. So if TCP were to upgrade, then we'd have to update all the protocols built on top of it, like the email protocols and others, but then all the routers would have to be replaced. It'd be a total mess, okay, a total nightmare. So base layer protocols, which is what Bitcoin is meant to be, do not change, okay? It's like TCP, it has not changed in decades. And especially when we're talking about a protocol that has to do with money, okay, it's even more important that it's set in stone because people contracted money, okay? And if you change the money, then you break all these contracts. So it's super important. Bitcoin is set in stone, and this was mentioned in the early writings of Satoshi. So to say that BTC is just the new evolved version, that doesn't make sense either, okay? Because this isn't like an app where you get a new version every year, or a mobile operating system where they give you new features once a year. It's not like that, okay? This is like TCP. It's set in stone. So that's the first reason it doesn't make sense to call BTC just the updated version. The second reason is that all the core features of Bitcoin, okay, don't work on BTC. Okay, literally, the primary use cases for Bitcoin do not work. Okay, and we'll get into what these are. So the first primary use case for Bitcoin is the ability to do micropayments. Okay, and this works on Bitcoin SV, but it does not work on BTC. So if you read the white paper, on the first page it talks about how with the current infrastructure, it's impossible to do these small casual payments. Okay, it's just too expensive. And then it lays out the solution to a new infrastructure where we could do these small casual payments on the web. Okay, in other words, micropayments. Now, this is super exciting for a ton of different reasons. Okay, one of the big use cases for this is that we can start moving away from the ad-based business models on the internet. Okay, which is very exciting to me. Okay, we've all heard this idea that if you are not paying for the product, you are the product. Okay, and this is the problem right now with the current ad-based business models of the internet. Okay, they gather all this data about us and they basically sell us for our behaviors, okay, to the highest bidder. So what we want to do instead is be the end customer. Okay, we don't want to be the product, but we want to be the customer of these services. Well, the thing about that that's tricky is that most of these web services aren't worth that much. Like, how much would you be willing to pay for a Google search? Okay, just an individual Google search is what I mean. Okay, maybe 1/10 of a cent. Okay, or how much would you be willing to look at somebody's page on a social media site? I don't know, maybe a fraction of a cent. So if we were going to pay directly to use these services, we would need a payment system that could do things for a fraction of a cent. Okay, and that doesn't work with credit cards, okay, because the normal sort of credit card transaction fee for the merchants is around 2% plus 10 cents. Okay, so anything less than 10 cents obviously doesn't make sense because you don't want to pay, 100% transaction fee. Okay, but realistically, anything less than $1 doesn't make much sense because you're still giving up more than 10% of your revenue to the payment processor. Okay, and so what we need is something that is much, much, much cheaper, okay, that can do these small casual payments. And this is what Bitcoin allows us to do. So Bitcoin can do a payment for a fraction of a cent, okay? And so this allows us to do things like pay 1/10 of a cent for a Google search. And this is just not possible using credit cards, okay? So this enables all sorts of new business models on the internet where we can start being the end customer, okay, instead of being the product. Now, beyond just changing internet business models, it also opens up a possibility for a bunch of new type of things, okay? Like, for example, if you wanted to connect to a public Wi-Fi, well, instead of paying for a day or whatever, you could actually potentially pay for the data used, right? You pay per packet of data. Okay, and this has a lot of benefits. Recently, I was in this hotel in Africa where they had really low bandwidth internet, okay? And everybody at the hotel would try and use a computer at the same time in the evening, and it would crash it for everybody, okay? So nobody had access. But you could imagine that if we're paying per packet, you could have like surge pricing, okay? Where if it's super busy, then they could, you know, raise the price, and then at least somebody would be able to connect to the internet. Okay, but right now, since there's no way of pricing this stuff, it just doesn't work for anybody. Okay, even in the United States, sometimes when I'm in traffic, okay, and there's everybody else is in traffic too, and everybody's trying to look at their phone, and the internet doesn't work for anybody, okay, because there's too many people trying to access the same cell tower. Okay, but if we had things like pay per packet internet, then we could have this dynamic pricing, and at least somebody could access the internet if it was super important that they do. Okay, they just have to pay more. But this is what money is for. Money is for allocating scarce resource in an orderly way. Okay, so micropayments, super, super helpful. Okay, so not only for ad-based, getting rid of the ad-based business model of the internet, but things like accessing the internet by paying per packet, or even things like the parking meters. Okay, it sounds kind of silly, but in my town, they recently started giving us the ability to pay for the parking meters with a card. But the problem is that, you know, normally you just want to pop in like a 25-cent thing to pay for 20 minutes. But when you swipe your card, it immediately charges you $3 and gives you a 2-hour limit. Okay, well, that's not what I wanted. I just want to be there for 20 minutes. Okay, but the reason they do that is because, again, it's too expensive to do small payments. So they have to charge you the $3, okay, instead of just the 25 cents or whatever. But with the ability to do micropayments, we can do that kind of thing where you pay for small payments. Okay, so this is perhaps the most important and primary use case for Bitcoin, micropayments, and it doesn't work on BTC. Okay, it works on BSV, but on BTC, the average transaction fee as of today is like $2 to $3. Okay, and so it's actually more expensive than credit cards in most cases. Okay, and so it just doesn't make any sense. So this is why BSV is Bitcoin. BTC is something else. Okay, now the second primary use case that I want to talk about here is the ability to do programmable money, okay, or smart contracts. I prefer the word programmable money because I think it's a little bit clearer, but the term smart contracts is popular. Okay, so this feature was actually built into Bitcoin from day one, okay? But these opcodes that make it possible were disabled, okay? So funny story, but Vitalik Buterin, when he went to create Ethereum, he was first looking at this Bitcoin project called Mastercoin, which was trying to use the opcodes that were left to do some of these sort of programmable money features on top of Bitcoin. Okay, now at the time, none of the developers wanted to re-enable these opcodes. And so instead of Vitalik building Ethereum on top of Bitcoin, he was forced to create his own blockchain. Okay, so Ethereum should have never needed to exist. It should have just all been done on Bitcoin. Okay, but because these opcodes were disabled, it forced him to build his own blockchain. Well, BSV follows the original protocol, and it has, re-enabled all of these opcodes that were disabled. Okay, so all the things that you see on Ethereum, like the NFTs, okay, or even the fungible tokens, like, tokens that people want to build, or central bank digital currencies, all of that kind of stuff, okay, is possible on Bitcoin SV. But even better, since we can do, micropayments, you could actually do these things for inexpensive items, not just these super expensive pieces of art that, you have to pay $20 to transfer because there's so much congestion on the network and the fees are so high. But instead, what if you want to, buy a subway ticket NFT, okay, or a bus ticket or a movie ticket? So because we could do micropayments on BSV, that's the kind of thing that you could do as NFTs, right? Okay, it allows for all this type of stuff, stock certificates, car titles, stuff like this, okay? So Bitcoin SV can do all of this stuff at a much, much cheaper price than Ethereum. So NFTs, fungible tokens, smart contracts, okay, it's all possible. And people used to say that Bitcoin script was just too complicated to do these things. Okay, well, now there's a company called Script that has built this higher level language that's human readable that then compiles into Bitcoin script. Okay, and so Bitcoin script was never meant to be where you write the program. Okay, it's more like that's like the assembly language, but rather we were supposed to design languages that were human readable that then compiled into Bitcoin script. Okay, and so there's a company called Script that has done that. Okay, and so it's super easy to do this programmable money smart contract stuff. All right, so that's the second primary feature of Bitcoin that, again, was in there from day one. It was just disabled. So Ethereum should have never existed. Okay, and of course, this is only possible on BSV, doesn't work on BTC. Now, the third primary use case is the ability to do what I'm going to call improved record keeping. Okay, and this is super useful for things like cybersecurity and also just reducing fraud. So let's start with the cybersecurity example. So one of the things that hackers will often do is when they get into a database, they'll do a bunch of changes and then they'll erase their change logs, right? They'll cover their tracks basically. Well, with Bitcoin, since we can write to this immutable, ledger, and we can do it for only a fraction of a cent, you could have, potentially the administrator changes could be written to the blockchain, okay, in an immutable way. And it's going to use a bunch of some of these opcodes that were disabled, but they work on BSV, like op push data, etc. But you could have these changes be written to the blockchain in an immutable way. And so the hacker that gets in there and changes a bunch of things, well, he can't erase his tracks. Okay, he can't delete the logs. They're immutable. So it's stuff like this where it helps us do record keeping in a better way. Okay, we can also publish, the hash of a certain data, and so you can prove that a file existed at a certain point in time, or that a database was in a certain state at a certain point in time. Okay, this is super useful for all sorts of stuff. Okay, as far as reducing fraud, there's a way to prove that there's only one set of books. So things like the Madoff Ponzi wouldn't be possible in a world of Bitcoin, right? Because he had multiple sets of books. Okay, one that he kept to himself of what the actual, finances were, but then one that he showed to the auditors and one that he showed to potential investors. So with Bitcoin, you can show that there's only one set of books, okay? And so it could help reduce fraud. So this is what Bitcoin is about, right? The primary feature, of course, is the micropayments, but it also has these other added benefits, okay, and these other features that we can use it for. And of course, none of these work on BTC. Okay, they work just if we follow the original protocol that was laid out in the white paper and the early writings of Satoshi. Okay, and that's what BSV re-enables. Okay, it re-enables that early protocol. Now, if you look on the internet, you just search for error code 402, okay, it'll be an error code that says payment required. It's kind of like when you go to use a server and it says can't connect to server and you get an error code. Well, this one says payment required. And the early, creators of the internet had this idea that there'd be payments on the web somehow. Okay, there just wasn't the implementation. And in many ways, Bitcoin is that implementation. Okay, we now have a way to do micropayments and we can pay for services over the web. Okay, that's really the primary use case of Bitcoin that I see, and it doesn't work on BTC. okay, but it does on Bitcoin SV. So again, Bitcoin SV is just Bitcoin. It follows the original protocol laid out in the white paper and the early writings of Satoshi. And there's a lot to talk about, but I will not go into it anymore. I'll just leave it at that, and that'll be a good introduction. All right, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one.
Yeah, I'm not surprised I wasn't asked why I'm convinced Craig is Satoshi. I posted on Reddit. He signed in my presence using the private key from block number 1, the very first mined Bitcoin block, on a computer that I'm convinced had not been tampered with, on software I'm convinced that had not been tampered with, a message of my choosing. And so that kind of sealed the deal for me, convincing me that he does have that private key. My interactions with him feel like this is the inventor of Bitcoin. I remind everybody he is human. I'm sure he makes mistakes like we all do. I'm sure he's made some mistakes in the past. And he wants his privacy. So I'm going to draw a line. If you ask me questions about this, I draw the line at, I will explain why I'm convinced. I will not go into personal details of the discussion that I had with him.
Just to sow a bit of controversy for fun, I'll explain why I think he's probably not Satoshi. It's
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
I mean, first of all, very simple signaling theory. He had the opportunity to take 2 different paths of proving that he's him. One path would have been to make that exact kind of proof, make a signature from the first Bitcoin block, put the signature out in public, make a very simple 10-line blog post that anyone, including people, including cryptographers like Dan Bonet and Ben Kaminsky and so forth, can verify that it's him, and just post that out there and let the cryptographic community do it. Instead, he's taken this path where he's wrote this big long blog post with 200 lines. It's so confusing that even Dan Kaminsky said it's too confusing, and tried to only show that signature to a few select people, and we're supposed to trust them. So, in general, signaling theory says if you have a good way of proving something and a noisy way of proving something, and you choose the noisy way, then that means chances are it's because you couldn't do the good way in the first place.
Okay. So we'll be around for questions. Just thank you very much for everyone. Just put your hands together. Thank the panelists.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you just remove your phones and you type on Google, Bitcoin founder, the name that comes out is Satoshi Nakamoto. Right under it are the words, Australian entrepreneur Craig Wright has claimed he is Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of the virtual currency Bitcoin. Mr. Wright, who lives in London, showed the BBC his evidence that he launched the currency back in 2009. So all this has been alleged, but the man that says he is the founder of Bitcoin is here. So Craig, kindly join us on stage.
So, no thanks for that, but anyway. I'm going to do the bit no one likes. I don't like really caring whether you like me. Now, I'm going to tell you the hard bits. Now, in 2009, the GDP of this country was 5.4 billion US dollars. Now it's 8.4 billion US dollars. That's less than doubling in 10 years. That's bad. Now, I don't care whether you say that's good or whatever else. If you want to go into all this other BS, I'm not going to be like everyone over there who wants to sell you a solution. I don't really care because I'm here for the long term. I'm going to be here in 20, 30 years, and eventually I don't really care what you say. I'm going to be having the solutions you're using. Now, the fact of the matter on this is you can open up and allow free trade, you can open up and allow your country to be more, or you can wait and hand money to a whole lot of people. And I'll say this quite frankly because I've got more money than your country. So I'm not going to ask
for anything. I don't want your investment. I don't want, like Stella and everything else, to be handed money. I don't really care. I'm just going to develop solutions, and they're going to go out there and they're going to be created and they're going to be used because we can basically make them that way. Now, one thing that annoys me is how, oh, I've got to be happy and tell everyone what they want. No. I'm going to do things so that people can trade whether you like it or not. I don't want an African currency. I want the world. I don't really care about an African, Pan-African group. I want this group of 1 billion and a bit people to go out there and trade with Americans, with the Europeans, with Australians, with Japanese. That's what matters. Not because you sell bits of cobalt to the Chinese and Americans and get it back again. Not because you don't manufacture here. Not because people like Tesla tell you you shouldn't invest in coal power plants because, well, that would enable you to actually smelt your own steel, smelt your own aluminium, smelt your own cobalt and sell it at higher rates, basically capturing profit that no one wants. I'm going to do it because you can actually capture things here. When your own markets enable global commerce, when your people can sell anywhere, and there are about 12 million people here. 12 million people's half of Australia. And yet you have resources that are needed. Rare earth metals are called rare earth metals because they are rare. And they're in extreme supply. And yet the value you get out of them is minimal. So I don't really care whether the people here like to hear this or not, but the fact of the matter is, if you want this country, if you want this region to really take off, then you need to allow people to start trading freely, openly, not because you control the money, not because you do some sort of silly little boondoggle project, and I'm not going to go through all the things there, but because you enable everyone to trade. When I've been walking around this country, I had pounds, US dollars, and Rwandan francs. And people wanted US dollars. So you can say all you want about an African currency. If people in markets and other places want to take US dollars, they will. And if you can create a global currency, they will take it. You cannot stop them. That simple. Your people will do this eventually because they will become richer. You can either help them or you can stand in their way. And if you stand in the way, you're helping poverty. So basically, this is very simple. Enable your country to be all it can, not doubling every 10 years or less. This country should be growing far more. That's what I want to see. I don't want investment from you. I don't want anything like that. What we're here is basically to create technology that we're licensing, which, yes, helps me, but not because of the way you're looking at it, because I want to see everyone trade. That's it. Thank you.